Hey guys, so I'm going to start another video today for you as we're dealing with the law, right? And so if you've been tracking what we've been talking about over these past couple days, we've been really looking into the fact that Jesus tells us that the Old Testament is for us, that we need to be reading our Bibles. And so, we're been kind of trying to figure out, okay, so how do I read this? What's the point, right? Now, one of the things that necessarily is going to come up in fact, on Sunday, I had this question come up, which is, you know, how do we deal with these crazy laws, right? Because you read some of them and you think, man, these are messed up, right? Like I thought that God was a certain way, but yet now I read these laws in the Old Testament, and it seems like maybe what did he change? Did he do something else? And so I want to kind of walk through that, maybe give you some guiding principles. I do think that one of the things that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to read through them and just begin to think about, what is God teaching me in this case? What kind of wisdom can I glean from this? But the other thing I want you to do is I need you to keep in mind two more things, right? First off, these laws, has Jesus fulfilled them in himself, right? So when you look at a lot of the clean versus unclean ceremonial stuff, like that's all done. But what does that teach me, right? Those are big things, right? What does it mean to be clean versus unclean? I can do a video. We probably should do one on that too, so that you can sift through. Because if you don't know what that means, you're going to be frustrated, and you're going to equate them with other things and begin to think that that God has some sort of changed his mind, or why are these things bad or good? It's not about bad, good, or anything like that. But here's what I want to deal with today, right now. This is this other piece, which is, what is the context surrounding Israel show us? Now, you know me, I'm not a big person on context. I think everything that's in the text is there for a reason, and that what we need is the text to help illuminate everything that we need. So I want to show you something, and I think this is a helpful hermeneutic. This is a helpful way to kind of understand how do we approach many of these weird laws that come from the Old Testament. And now, one thing I will say, this is not original to me. In fact, this discussion today comes out of a favorite book of mine that I have, which is called Reading Moses, Seeing Jesus. If you've never read Reading Moses, Seeing Jesus, then you need to get that book. It's a great book. Very short. If you're a short reader, you like that, like me, do it. Okay, notice this exchange, though. I'm going to throw open my screen now. We're going to look at Matthew 19. So for you guys who are at Royal Palms Church, Royal Palms Baptist, we're going to be there in 2 years. Okay, so right now, though, let's look at what this is saying. Notice this exchange. When Jesus had finished saying these things, he departed from Galilee, and he went to the region of Judea, across from the Jordan, and large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. Some Pharisees approached him to test him, and they asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife on any grounds?" Jesus answers. Now notice how he answers too, by the way. This is important because I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that how Jesus responds. He goes and he appeals to what? Creation. We should always continue to keep that in mind, that the ideals that God has is in creation, which is important, right? Because when you get to how Paul talks about how marriage should be between a husband and a wife, that male headship in the marriage, male headship in terms of the pastorate, he appeals to creation. So Jesus is doing that here. He says, "Haven't you read that he who created them in the beginning made them male and female? He also said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." Now he's quoting Genesis 2 here. You'll see Genesis 2:24 is the reference. And then he adds, "So they're no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." So Jesus says the ideal is two together, stay together, right? That's the point. Husband and a wife, that's it. That's how he responds. Now they say, "But hey, why then did Moses command us to give divorce papers and to send her away?" Now this is important. So check this out. Jesus has said the ideal is that one man, one woman, that's it. You're together forever in this life. Okay? That's the standard. That's the creation standard. That was the ideal. Now, these guys rightfully say Oh, Jesus. Listen, man. Maybe you haven't read the law, but the Bible, the old covenant, which is, by the way, how often people are, oh, not really. I don't really ever get that. But he says, right? Notice what they say. Moses, why did he tell us and command us to do this? So why do we have laws on divorce then if the standard is always that God wanted two to be together? I mean, you understand what they're saying? This is important, guys. Jesus says the two shouldn't come apart. The guys say, well, then, if that's the standard, if that's what God has always wanted, then why did he give standards and allow for divorce in the Old Covenant? Notice what Jesus says, and I think this has helped clear up a lot of stuff. Here's what he says. Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because of the hardness of your hearts. But it was not like that from the beginning. For I tell you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. And I love the response from the disciple. His disciples say, if the relationship of a man with his wife is like this, it's better not to marry. Do you catch this? Like, here's what's being said. And Jesus is saying, yeah, the standard was two forever. But because of the hardness of your hearts, the hardness of Israel, the hardness of that current generation, right, that had been given to them to say, look, you people are a people that are living in a fallen world. You are a fallen people, and God is working with them where they're at. I mean, you got to think about that. Essentially, what Jesus is saying is that God was giving you almost a compromise, right? That you guys, his ideal, that creation standard was two forever. But because of your fallenness, because of where the whole world was at, he, through the Mosaic law, was giving baby steps to ultimately that ideal. In fact, that's when you get to the New Testament, that the point is to get back into creation ideals, that the rest of the world says this is how it should be. You don't like your wife, get rid of her, divorce her. But now we are under the new covenant, and what does it say? Is here's how you are to love your wife, that you are to lay your life down, that you're to stay bonded together, right? So that's important stuff. Now, I want to show you the original passage that they're quoting. That comes from Deuteronomy 24, and that should help a little bit in understand. I want to say, what is in the world going on, right? Let's think about marriage for just a second in the Mosaic period. Let's read it, okay? So it says, if a man marries a woman, but she becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, he may write her a certificate of divorce and hand it to her and send her away from his house. And after leaving his house, she goes and becomes another man's wife. And the second man hates her and writes her a divorce certificate and hands it to her and sends her away from his house. Or if he dies, the first husband who sent her away may not marry her again after she's been defiled, because the Lord, that would be detestable to the Lord. You must not bring guilt on the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. So that's a weird set of laws, right? But essentially what he's saying is marriage is so important, guys, that, look, I'm going to allow for divorce because the rest of the world, everybody's doing this. For them as Israel, and this is what essentially I'm trying to get to the point, is that you've taken a people who have just been bonded together at Sinai, all different backgrounds. They've grown up in Egypt. They are hard-hearted to the max. They don't know anything else. They haven't had the laws given. They have not grown up in a culture of the scriptures. There's been no scriptures, right? They've known Egypt, and they've known the surrounding nations and everything that goes on. And so really all you know is messed up stuff. You begin to look into what it was like, what life was like amongst the ancient Egyptians. You look at what life was like amongst the Canaanites. Just begin to do that. You'll begin to see like they have some pretty messed up standards. In fact, the law always gives us insight in the fact of what it was like in terms of the people. Like you look at some of the laws of about what the people, how Israel was to approach God, and he's talking about like, hey, don't do these things, don't do these, because the people in the land do these things. You look at Deuteronomy 18, you'll see that, and that list is pretty scary of what kind of place you're walking into. And so just know that the world around them is nowhere even close to this. Now, so here they are, and he's saying marriage is so important that if you're going to divorce her and she gets married to somebody else, you can't bring her back. It's over, man. You don't get to just change your mind and send a woman off like that. If you're going to do this, then you better be very serious about it. That's the Mosaic standard, right? But Jesus says, guys, that wasn't what was intended. It was never meant to be that way. God did that because of the hardness of your heart. So here's what I want you to think about. When you read these laws, you need to keep in mind that this is a fallen people. They are nowhere near close to Genesis 1 and 2. God had a standard for that. Now, the church, through Jesus Christ, is the beginning to try to point us back to that. And one day it will be realized in the new heavens and new earth. So when we read the Old Covenant, we begin to see, though, baby steps getting us to the new covenant. Right? That's the point, right? As the old is obsolete, it will fall away. It was inferior. That's why we needed a new, where it would no longer be on stones, as Jeremiah 31 says. It would be on the hearts. Ezekiel 36 said God would have to give us a new heart. And so we do need to keep that in mind. So as we read these, we're realizing that we're getting a snapshot, as Jesus says, of the hardness of the heart of the people, that he's working with them where they're at and getting them there. Case in point, if you ever want to look into standards of slavery, okay, the ancient Near Eastern practice of slavery is slaves had no rights. They were less than human. Okay? When the Old Covenant comes along, now you begin to see slaves have to have their day of rest with you. Slaves can participate in in these festivals with you. They're to be brought in. You begin to see that their rights and how Moses, the Mosaic Covenant, clamps down. Like they're being given way more rights. There's restrictions on what you can do. And so when you look at the difference between the way a slave is to be treated in a Mosaic Covenant versus the way it was around the ancient world, it was light years away difference. But you don't see in the Mosaic Covenant God saying, let's free them just yet, because nobody did that. That was not in that culture. But by the time you get to the New Covenant, right, you get to the standards that are put in there, we begin to see things like in Galatians, talking about that there is no slave or free in Christ. All are equal. So now, as you're in there, you're in church, and maybe society, the Rome, and the estimates are, was it more than half of the empire is slave, right? Everybody in your church, you're looking at a bunch of slaves, and there might be a part of you to say, I'm so glad I'm not one of those people. But now you see that the new covenant is, these people are my equals. God doesn't look at me and say, I'm greater than them, right? You begin to see in 1 Corinthians, right, that Paul is telling the slaves that even they should try to free themselves. And that masters, if you're a Christian master, you better treat them with decency. And so there's a lot of things that you see is that we continue to see the law get us closer to what was ideal. Never to enslave anybody, to never have it be that way, but the new covenant gets us closer to what the ideal is. It shifts us to that's where we need to go. But it's not that way in the old covenant. It's baby steps towards that. So when you read a lot of the laws, a lot of them can be explained by that. Simply baby steps. Baby steps out of the ancient world that they find themselves in towards a better covenant. Now, read the laws, and you'll see, even though they seem hard-hearted or weird, you will still see compassion and grace there. You'll still see a better way than what was offered in the world around them. Okay, so I hope that discussion helps, and let me know what you think. You can comment below or send me an email if you want to have something else, another topic or something addressed in that vein. But we'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye.